So I want to end just with this. I want to show you a picture because I found this picture and I found it very poignant, and I'm sure you will too. You probably remember the picture. This is a picture on a boat, and this is 1962. And there are two people in that picture. This is the TSS Fair Sky. It was a Sitmar Line boat. Tell me who's in that picture.
Well, it's my mum sitting there on the...
Marianne.
As I see it, Marianne on the far right. She's next to her brother, George. And standing up in white is a dashing fellow who happens to be my father, Carlo, who was a purser on the ship that my mother travelled to on that long journey.
To England?
To England, here, where she lived in London for a while.
And she fell pregnant?
She did. She had a relationship with Carlo, and during, I think, not just on the ship, but clearly from piecing it together.
So you were conceived in England?
When he... Quite likely, that's right.
So you're one of us.
When he visited...
You're English, brother.
I'm still not going for you in the ashes, so don't try that. Don't try that on.
But you accept you could have been conceived in this country.
That's not going to happen. I think chances are I was.
Yeah.
I think I was here when the ship used to berth at Southampton. And my mum travelled, met him, had a relationship with him, fell pregnant. He was, when she told him he was engaged to someone, the person who became his wife back in Italy. And so she went back to Australia, had me, made the courageous decision in 1963 to be a single mother and to raise me. She was very Catholic. So it was a difficult thing for the family. And at that time...
She was urged to have you adopted.
She was, and that was what was very common at the time.
Your life could have been so different.
It would have been very different. And at the time it was to be that I would be adopted out, and that the story would be told in the local community and in the family that she had got news of my father's death, and that had caused her to the trauma to lose her child. But she couldn't do that. There was a moment where a nun at the hospital knew that she was the sort of person who she just really didn't want that to happen. She was under a bit of pressure. So she brought me into my mum, and my mum was never going to let me go.
What a moment.
I
mean, that's sliding doors.
Oh, absolutely.
Of an incomparable, enormous consequence.
Oh, and she then adopted his name, Albanese.
But continued to pretend that he had died in an accident.
That's right. And I was told
including
that.
to you.
Yeah, I was told that until I was old enough when she felt I could understand.
You were 14, I think.
I was 14, 15, you know.
How did you feel when you found out he's potentially still alive?
Oh, at the time, I mean, I was a pretty tough young kid. We had a difficult upbringing. I mean, my mum had rheumatoid arthritis and was crippled up, was an invalid pensioner. We lived in a council house where she had lived her whole life. My grandparents had died by then. So it was just me and Mum. We didn't have anything economically, but I had her unconditional love, and that was enough for me. And so I said, I'm not interested, you know, that you're enough for me, which is what she needed to hear. So while she was alive, I didn't search for him, but she died in 2002. My son had come along in 2000, and there was a moment where I was at her gravesite, and my little boy was very little, said, you know, where's your daddy? And I sort of realised that, you know, I needed to, and he had a right to understand what had happened. And so I had, I guess, once she passed away, I could then search for him without bringing any sense that she wasn't all I needed. And so I found him in 2009.
Well, it's an amazing story because this is nearly 40 years later.
Yeah, 46 years later.
I mean, incredible.
I was 46 when we met.
Right, and by pure chance, a friend of yours is now running the ship company that had been renamed several times. It was now the Carnival Cruises. You knew this woman, and she helped the search, and they find your dad's old employment card
details
in some dusty, rickety area in Genoa where the original ship's stuff had all been sent.
Yeah.
And from that, you were able, by now, you're a minister, right? Under
That's right. I was a minister in the
Kevin
government.
Rudd. And you're able to track down your dad. And you're in a meet, or you're in your office, I think. And it's a Thursday. And you get a call from this friend of yours who's running the ship company. And she just says, "We've found him."
It was a remarkable moment. And I was chairing a ministerial council meeting of all the state and territory ministers, so an important meeting that night. And I told my staff to go on without me, and it took my breath away. It was an extraordinary moment.
Emotional for you?
And it was incredibly emotional.
Did you shed a tear?
Absolutely. It was. I didn't realise just how significant it was, because I think it is. Everyone's different, and relationships are complex, as my life story shows. But for me, that sense of identity and belonging was important. You know, I had this name, Albanese, and I'd said, when asked, and I represent a big Italian constituency as well in Sydney. So when I was asked, I would say Naples, because that's where the ship sailed from. But in the end, it was Puglia, the other side of Italy.
And 6 weeks later, you're there.
Yeah,
and the door opens, and in walks your dad. This is 46 years later.
Yeah, we wrote to him and wrote a careful letter just saying that my mother, Mary Ellery, was known to him and that I would be visiting Italy. I was visiting the European Transport Minister at the time. Tajani was an Italian. So I had a meeting with him scheduled. So I wrote and said, I'll be here, on this day, on this weekend. And so I met with, they had an intermediary. They were wondering what was going on here, I guess. Had an intermediary. I told her the story, and I said, I don't want anything out of him. I would like to meet him. I think he's my father. And so I didn't know what to expect. And then the very next morning, I had a very short window of opportunity because I had a full schedule. I was on my way to London as well to speak at the International Maritime Organisation here, the big conference. And in he walked. I didn't know what to expect, and he just embraced me. And
what a moment.
That was quite extraordinary.
How did you feel hugging your dad that you thought was dead until you were 14?
It was an incredible moment, and not just him, but my half-brother and half-sister came with him. And so I went from having a very small family to having a much larger one, and it just gave me that sense of completeness. And I was very lucky because he passed away in January of 2014. So we were able to meet on a few occasions. I travelled to Italy. I brought back, it was a short meeting, so I brought back my son to meet his grandfather in the following Easter. So in Easter of 2010. And
would any of this have happened if your boy hadn't said what he'd said at your mum's graveside?
Quite possibly not, or if someone at Carnival Cruises
happened to be someone you
hadn't have done a lot and if she hadn't have known a historian who lives in Wollongong who knew where to look and had found this box of papers, essentially employment files, in a port
It's
in
an
Genoa.
incredible. Were you able to be there when your father died or not?
I went to visit him in 2013 in December. We lost the election in 2013. By then, I'd become Deputy Prime Minister. Before we lost that election, lost government, he wasn't well, so I went to see him. I knew that he was dying. He was at home in his family flat there in Puglia, and we knew we were saying goodbye to each other. And that the last thing that he said to me was that he was glad that he'd found me.
Amazing.
It was quite a journey from that beginning to be Australian Prime Minister. It says a great deal about our country.
It's a hell of a
I
story.
think.
What would they have made of you becoming Prime Minister, your parents?
Well, my mum would have shed a tear perhaps each and every day. I remember my first speech, she was there up in the gallery, and I couldn't look up because if I had of, I would have been hopeless as well. She was incredibly proud, and I see what I do as her achievement without her, and that unconditional love of a parent for their child, which she gave me. She did it really tough. She really wasn't very well when she died. She was only 65 years old, and she was spent really at the end of what had
She
been
have
a
made
tough
of your
life.
journey today. You'll go and see the King.
Oh, she would have.
And
she would have been wrapped.
having skipped the journey to hospital, diverted with you inside her to see the Queen. I mean, what an amazing journey that has been.
Oh, look, she would have been wrapped by all of it, and she would have been very proud. And I still think that she's looking down on me, and she's still with me each and every day, because the values that I have, the values that she gave me. And I say I was raised with three great faiths, to go back to Russell Crowe being one of them, the Catholic Church, South Sydney Football Club and the Australian Labor Party. And they're the values that I have and that I hold very dear.
Prime Minister, it's been a real pleasure. What an extraordinary story your story is, and thank you for sharing it with me.
Yeah, thanks very much.
And good luck with my King when you go and see him.
Indeed. I'll say good day to him.
Please do. Great to see you.
Good on you.
Thank you.